Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got the breakup map for May 16th. And snowmelt still causing a fuss on the Yukon River down toward in the greater Amonic area. So there's a flood advisory out for elevated water levels there, and that's out until 1 p.m. Sunday, in which case water levels should subside. And the remainder of the Yukon River pretty much done on breakup there. Porcupine still has some ice on it, as well as the Koyukuk and the Kobuk River and the Noatak River in a kind of a breakup pattern there as well. But the North Slope rivers are still mostly ice, and the chilly temperatures delaying breakup on those rivers for a while longer. And moving to the hazardous weather graphics, there are no weather watches, warnings, or advisories out for anywhere in the state for tonight through tomorrow, and possibly even the day after. So we'll just go to the fire danger chart here. And this shows areas of very high and extreme fire danger, but that's for grass fuel. The heavier fuels are not quite as bad, but it just shows the Fairbanks area there, as far as grass goes, very extreme, especially with the gusty winds that they have at times in that area. It's about 25 miles an hour around the Fairbanks area. But you can see very high fire danger westward across much of the Seward Peninsula, up along the northwest areas, Noatak Valley, out to the coastline, and everywhere south of the Brooks Range, all the way down to the eastern Alaska Range, Copper River Basin, and some high fire danger, south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, southern Susitna Valley, Manuska Valley, as well as in the Kuskokwim Valley. It's even very high there, and an area of high and very high fire danger for grasses again for the Bristol Bay area, King Salmon, and looks like westward to Dillingham. So moving on to the satellite imagery, see some clouds over the southwest interior brought a few scattered showers to that area, real light precipitation amounts, just no more than a couple hundredths of an inch falling, and some showers St. Lawrence Island, and then a couple of bands of clouds out west, one associated with a front, bringing, again, light amounts of moisture, about 0.2 of an inch to Adak, and not much at all falling across eastern Aleutians with scattered showers. Cold Bay did pick up about 0.03 of an inch today. Nome had about 1/100 of an inch from a brief shower earlier today, and Teller reporting light snow, temperature under 30 degrees, and kind of a mixture of sprinkles or flurries there for the St. Lawrence Island area. So nothing really significant at all today. Otherwise, showers starting to pop up across the eastern Copper River Basin areas around Northway, eastern Alaska Range, and let's see, Eureka, which is farther or just up a ways up from the Palmer area along the Glen Highway there. They had 1/100 of an inch, so some showers starting to break out there. And Chisana had 0.2 of an inch, so the showers are developing there over the eastern and northeast Copper River Basin on into Canada. Dry today over the Panhandle with variable clouds, and flurries continued eastern Arctic coast, and fog as far west as the central coast, but much better. Clear skies, winds gusting up to 40 miles an hour today out of the east and northeast at both Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. That resulted in mostly sunny skies with a little bit of cirrus there. And rolling this through again, you can see the low pressure area out over the western Aleutians and the weakening front pushing eastward, but not a lot of precipitation with that. On the chart, actually kind of a couple of features. One, the first front weakening into a trough, another one developing a little farther back to the west. and then the trough caught up in southeast flow around the big upper level low over the Aleutians, bringing the clouds and showers to the southwest coast, Alaska Peninsula, and that's slipping on up in toward the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. But sunshine, as I mentioned, over the northwest coast into the Selawik-Kobuk Valley areas, and higher pressure up over the North Slope in Alaska, or up over the North Slope in the Arctic coast, kicking the winds out of the north, as I mentioned, Fairbanks up to 25 miles an hour and 25 to 30 miles an hour, some of the higher elevations like Indian Mountain. Showers on the increase, as well as the clouds, Copper River Basin along that trough, much lesser extent there along the western Alaska Range, Denali Park area, and high pressure, light winds, and looks like some clearing occurred over Kodiak Island today, and is variably cloudy and dry over the southeast coast. For the forecast for tonight, not much change there. Light winds and variably cloudy skies for the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast as well. Risk of a shower over the Talkeetnas, maybe the western Susitna Valley to the Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley. Anything that does fall will be quite light and pretty widely scattered. Same thing for the North-Waytoke area to Nabezna, Chisana. Dry over the interior, still kind of breezy, higher elevations in the northwest interior, out to the western Arctic coast, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, maybe Point Lay, but those winds kind of winding down. Snow showers, or actually flurries, lighter than snow showers, fog, and lower flying conditions continue for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and rain pushes in. Better chance of rain pushing into at least Unmak Island tonight. Looks pretty wet, damp, unsettled for Adak and Atka, as well as the western Aleutians. And for the forecast for Sunday, tomorrow, still breezy on the western Arctic coast. Again, Point Lay down to Point Hope, and Kivalina should be clear with that offshore flow. Partly sunny for the Seward Peninsula and dry, maybe some breaks for St. Lawrence Island. Mostly sunny central interior. And actually from the Brooks Range southward, be mostly sunny. North of the Brooks Range, lower clouds persisting throughout much of the day with areas of fog along the central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and still a chance of flurries, but that'll be mainly on the central coast. And front pushing wind and a little bit of an increase in the winds, maybe gusts 30 miles an hour tops at places like Cold Bay, increasing chances for rain for the Pribilofs, and also a little bit of a breeze out of the east. Otherwise, low clouds, fog, drizzle, light rain, pretty widespread from the eastern Aleutians all the way out to Chimianat or a little bit more of a breeze out over the far western Aleutians, but nothing much. And showers again, better chance, a little more widespread now from the Copper River Basin in across mountainous terrain of south central Alaska on out to the southwest coast, and partly to mostly sunny for the Panhandle, partly sunny skies for Kodiak Island. Moving ahead to the outlook for the Monday, we've got that front actually holds together pretty well and brings an increasing chance of rain, or periods of rain for the North Gulf Coast, spreading eastward, but not quite making it to Yakutat. It'll be partly to mostly sunny over the Panhandle. And it looks like chance of rain actually moves into all of south central Alaska late Monday afternoon and overnight Monday night, with the main low pulling into Bristol Bay. So look for widespread area light rain, clouds, and areas of fog under that low center, with showers with the weaker low back to the west. And next front, trying to push some rain up toward the west central Aleutians. Kind of a break there for the Chimiat-2 area. Tighter gradient means gustier winds, a little more widespread and picking up, especially on the western Arctic coast, back down to about Point Hope. And through the passes of the Alaska Range, Kobuk-Koyukuk Valley, higher elevations, even on down toward the White Mountains, Indian Mountain, see a pretty good increase in the east-northeast winds. That'll elevate the fire dangers once again. Partly sunny for the Panhandle. Moving on to the forecast lows for tomorrow morning, 15 to 20 or into the lower 20s along the Arctic coast, teens North Slope Brooks Range, and upper 20s for the Kobuk-Koyukuk, upper Yukon Valley, all the way down to, it looks like Tanana, upper 20s, near freezing for Fairbanks, 22 the forecast low for Eagle, and near 40 for the Nome area, mid to upper 40s for the southwest interior to the Kuskokwim Valley, lower to mid 40s south central Alaska, and looks like lower to mid 40s there, maybe some upper 30s for the Panhandle, mid 40s Kodiak, lower to mid 40s the Aleutians, upper 30s far western Aleutians and the Pribilofs, and near 30 for St. Lawrence Island, followed by highs tomorrow. Not much of a rise there for Gamble, just 33 degrees coming up from your low at 30. Much milder though, 60s, lower to mid over the western interior there, and maybe even the central Seward Peninsula, but still below freezing from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast, where highs there mid to upper 20s. Lower 50s though for the upper Yukon Valley, mid to upper 50s for the Tanana Valley, and 55 to 65, 6 or 7 for the Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, lower 60s Copper River Basin, and well into the 60s in most areas of the Panhandle, maybe even pushing 70 over the southern areas. And for the lows Monday morning, teens to the lower 20s again for the North Slope and Arctic coast, and in the upper 20s, 25 to 30 for the northern interior, central interior, upper 20s to lower 30s, and in the 40s across southern Alaska, Panhandle, and the Aleutians, followed by highs 50s and 60s over the interior with up mid-20s for the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic Sunday morning, IFR, Arctic coast, marginal VFR, North Slope from the Brooks Range southward, VFR, all the way to Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, and the southeast coast. So marginal VFR, eastern Copper River Basin, Wrangell Mountains, and marginal VFR, Kodiak Island, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, becoming IFR for the eastern Aleutians, westward to about Adak, and mostly IFR from Amchitka to Shemya, IFR St. Lawrence Island, remainder of the Bering Sea marginal, and marginal VFR pushing up the Yukon River into at least the lower Yukon River Valley across the Delta. And for Sunday afternoon, IFR Central Arctic coast, central North Slope, marginal VFR staying north of the Brooks Range, VFR to the south, marginal VFR increasing along the North Gulf Coast Range and over the southeast interior to the eastern Alaska Range, staying VFR, south central Alaska, on out to Bristol Bay, and marginal VFR southern Kodiak Island up to about Chiniak, and then IFR south side of the Alaska Peninsula, wrapping up across the Pribilof Islands and covering much of the southern Bering Sea and Aleutians, with marginal VFR remaining over the Yukon Delta and Nunivak Island, north to the Bering Strait, south coast of the Seward Peninsula. Monday morning, IFR, central western Arctic coast and over toward Deadhorse to Barter Island, otherwise marginal again for the North Slope, south of the Brooks Range, no change, VFR. And marginal VFR now over Prince William Sound on the North Gulf Coast and possibly Lynn Canal. Otherwise, IFR southern Kodiak Island with that front and the south side of the Alaska Peninsula and over the central and southeast Bering Sea, and with another batch of moisture coming in toward the eastern Aleutians and much of the southern Bering Sea, IFR down to about the Aleutian chain. For the afternoon, that breaks up a little bit, marginal VFR with areas of IFR there for the southern Bering Sea, Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, IFR. IFR now pushing up into southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, and marginal for Kachemak Bay northward to about the Forelands and Cook Inlet, and then marginal VFR western Cook Inlet to the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, VFR for the Copper River Basin, and a good portion of interior Alaska. VFR continues for the southeast coast. Looks like some IFR holding over the central Arctic coast, portion of the North Slope. Passes, Anatuvik, Yadigan, another VFR day coming up tomorrow. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR as well. Rainy, VFR. Windy, VFR. Isabel, looking good. VFR flying definitely for that pass, both entrances. Marginal VFR at times at some point in the day, possible for Mentasta. And for Tanita, VFR. Portage, VFR. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet, again northward, 2,000 to 4,000 feet up along the northwest coast, with 2,000 feet near Cape Lisburne, 4,000 near Kivalina, 6,000 feet across southern Alaska and the Panhandle, and about 4,000 or so, give or take, out over the Bering Sea, 8,000 feet to the eastern Aleutians. And icing with that front pushing eastward, areas of isolated moderate rime icing spreading into the Alaska Peninsula, with some isolated areas of considerable moderate rime icing along the main frontal boundary, along in advance of it. And from there, taking a look at the jet stream, upper level ridging continuing there over the Chukchi Sea, north or northwest of Wrangel Island, and then big upper level low over northern Canada. So we've got northeast flow turning northerly and cutting down and pushing southward there across the Copper River Basin area, turning westerly at about 70 knots, and then the Pacific jet coming northward ahead of the Aleutian storm, 120 knots, westerlies 80 knots across Kodiak, then diving southeastward. 9,000 feet, high pressure southwest Alaska into the Gulf, light winds over the interior, mostly light northerlies, a little brisker along the Arctic coast, southerlies 50 knots approaching the eastern Aleutians, 3,000 feet, 35 to 40 knot winds there for the eastern Aleutians into the area just south of the Pribilofs with low pressure over the Aleutian chain. A couple of weak lows there, the Bering Strait and over the western interior. Turbulence-wise, moderate chop on the lee side of the Alaska Range, Fox Islands, and light to isolated moderate chop up along the northwest.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the northern lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the northern lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, oh, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything, so you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Looking back, looking at today's sea ice analysis, not much change from yesterday. So a little bit of ice mostly north of Nunivak Island and kind of an area of a little bit heavier ice to their southeast. And not much change over the northern Bering Sea around St. Lawrence Island or into Norton Sound. And not much change expected for the next several days. Moving on to coastal water forecast. Small craft advisories tomorrow for the south coast of the Panhandle, 25 knots out of the northwest with 8-foot seas. For the north coast, winds will be northwest at 15 with 7-foot seas. Inside waters, including Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Stevens Passage, and Clarence Strait, winds will be out of the northwest at 10 with 2-foot seas. For Monday, kind of a variable wind pattern, light variable winds over the central and southern inside waters at 10 knots or less with slight seas. Lynn Canal, south winds in the afternoon to 20 knots with 4-foot seas. And along the coast of Prince of Wales Island, look for northwesterlies at 25 with 8-foot seas. And then west winds on the central coast at 15, light winds on the north coast from the south-southeast, only at 10 knots with 5-foot seas. And for Cook Inlet, Sunday, tomorrow, northeast, 10 knots, seas 1 to 2 feet. East of 15 for Kamishak Bay. Southwest winds 20 knots for the North Gulf Coast, 7-foot seas. Southwest at 10 for Prince William Sound with 2-foot seas. Barren Islands, winds look to be southwest at 20 with seas running at about 6 feet. For Monday, east-northeast, 10 or variable winds at 10 knots for Cook Inlet with slight seas. East 25 for Kamishak Bay, small craft advisories there, as well as the Barren Islands, where winds will be southeast at 25 knots. Western North Gulf Coast, east at 20, Middleton Island area, south at 20 with 6-foot seas, and east winds in Prince William Sound in the forecast with seas running at about 3 feet. And for Sunday, Kodiak Island, southwest 20 knots, including Shelikof Strait, 5 to 6-foot seas. Bristol Bay, light winds out of the south at 10. And small craft advisories on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, where east winds will be 25 knots with 8-foot seas, 20-knot winds on the Bering Sea side, seas 3 feet. And for Monday, small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula on the north side, look for southerlies at 25 knots, 5-foot seas. South side, southwest at 30 knots from Cape Sarachef to Castle Cape with 9-foot seas, and Castle Cape to Sitkinak, southwest at 20. Those turn southerly at 20 knots up the east side of Kodiak and Fognak Island. Shelikof Strait, look for easterlies at 20 knots with 5-foot seas. For the Fox Islands, east winds 25 to 30 knots tomorrow with 7 to 10 foot seas. 20 to 25 knot winds for AKwx, 7 to 9 foot seas, and then 15 knot northeasterlies for Amchitka and Kiska Islands, west of Kiska, including Chimney and Attu, small craft advisories, northeast at 25. For Monday, northeast winds 30 knots for the western Aleutians, turning southwest at 25 to 30 knots for the central Aleutians, 6 to 10 foot seas there for Adak. And Unimak Island southwest, 25 to 30 knots, turns southerly at 25 to 30 knots for Unalaska Island. For the southwest coast, east-northeast, 15 tomorrow, northeast 15 St. Matthew Island, small craft advisories for the Pribilofs, east 25, 7-foot seas. Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, northeast winds 10 to 20 knots. Those will increase to 20 to 30 knots. Strongest are St. Lawrence Island. Small craft advisories there for Monday. East 15, Yukon Delta Coast, Kuskokwim Delta Coast, southeast at 20. Small craft advisories for the Pribilofs. Stiff east wind at 30 knots, 8-foot seas. Northeast 25 for St. Matthew Island. Light west winds for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast Sunday. West 5 to 10 knots, north at 10 for the central coast. Picking up to about 15 from Point Lay to Cape Beaufort. Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, northeast at 20. And down to Wales, south north at 15. 20 knot winds in the forecast from Wales to Cape Beaufort on Monday, with small craft advisories for the western Arctic coast, 25 knots out of the east, and east-northeast 15 for the central and east side. For tonight, generally fair. Look for some scattered showers, mostly cloudy skies across southern Alaska, dry for the Panhandle, rain pushing into Unimak Island. And for Sunday, better chance of showers, a little more widespread across the boundary there, lined from the Yukon Delta coast eastward to the Copper River Basin. Dry and with sunshine over the central and northern interior areas, and a weakening front brings increasing clouds and rain in across southern Alaska, especially in the late afternoon and evening. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.